The last person who told you the truth about yourself, was it your best friend? Or was it someone who hated you? Machiavelli wrote that a man who flatters you is more dangerous than a man who hates you. And he was right. Your friends are invested in the version of you they have already accepted. Your enemies? They are invested in finding the cracks. By the end of this video, you will understand why your harshest critics carry intelligence about you that no friend ever will, and you will have a method for using that intelligence to become harder, sharper, and more self-aware than 95% of men walking around right now. Here is what is at stake. Most men spend their entire lives surrounded by people who tell them what they want to hear. They die confused about who they actually were. The uncomfortable truth is that the person who hates you may understand you more clearly than the person who loves you. Do not be the man who never figures that out. Your friends edit the truth to protect your feelings. Your enemies do not. Abraham Lincoln kept a cabinet full of rivals, men who openly despised him before he appointed them. His Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, called Lincoln a long-armed ape in public. Lincoln kept him anyway. Because Stanton told him the truth when no one else would. When Lincoln made a bad military call, Stanton pushed back hard and did not soften it. Lincoln later said Stanton was one of the finest men he had ever known. Not his closest friend. His truth teller. There is a difference, and Lincoln knew it. Friendship operates on social lubrication. Over years, your friends have learned exactly which topics make you defensive, which failures you are sensitive about, which truths you simply cannot hear without shutting down. So they stop saying them. Not out of cruelty, out of care. The result is that your social circle becomes a mirror that only reflects your best angles. Your enemy has no such filter. He will say the thing your closest friend has been sitting on for 3 years. That is not an attack. That is data. The question is whether you are disciplined enough to hear it as such instead of just getting angry. Enemies track your patterns with ruthless precision because they are actively looking for the opening. Sun Tzu did not say know yourself. He said know yourself and know your enemy. The reason the second half matters, an adversary who wants to defeat you has to study you. Theodore Roosevelt's political enemies knew he was reckless under pressure long before his allies admitted it. The men closest to him admired the recklessness as boldness. His enemies saw it as a liability and exploited it strategically. They were more accurate. They were watching him with cold eyes rather than loyal ones. Pattern recognition requires distance. When you care about someone, you contextualize their behavior, you excuse it, rationalize it, assume the best. An enemy has no such bias. He watches you with cold objectivity, cataloging when you are consistent and when you crack, when you bluff and when you mean it. That cold observation, as uncomfortable as it is, sits closer to objective reality than anything your inner circle will produce. Your friends see you in the best light because they chose you. Your enemies see you in the harshest light because they are looking for where you fail. Both are incomplete pictures. But only one of them is warning you about something real. Where your enemy hits you hardest is exactly where you are most vulnerable and most in need of honest work. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the parts of yourself you refuse to look at directly. They do not disappear when you ignore them. They go underground in dry behavior you cannot explain. Napoleon's enemies called him arrogant, impulsive, and dangerously obsessed with legacy. His inner circle called him brilliant and visionary. History showed both groups were accurate, but his downfall came from exactly the things his enemies named. The arrogance. The inability to accept strategic retreat. The ego that could not survive a loss. His friends saw the gifts. His enemies saw the trapdoors. Pain is a signal worth decoding. When an enemy's words sting, it is worth stopping and asking why. If someone calls you lazy and you genuinely are not, it rolls off within the hour. If someone calls you lazy and it sits with you for 3 days, if you are still turning it over in your mind on Tuesday, that is not because they are cruel. That is because some part of you recognizes the signal. Epictetus was direct about this: it is not the man who attacks you that harms you, but your own judgment of his words. The sting is information. Most men respond with anger. The Stoic responds with honesty. How you respond to your enemies reveals more about your actual character than almost anything else you do. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire in the ancient world and had enemies who plotted against him, questioned his decisions publicly, and mocked his philosophical commitments. His response, recorded in the Meditations, which were never meant to be published, was not to crush them with force or nurse private resentment. He wrote about treating those who oppose you the way you treat a fire. It warms you if you keep the right distance. He used the friction as a calibration tool. Not because he was passive. Because he was disciplined enough to extract what the friction was revealing rather than just react to it. The way you handle opposition is the truest test of who you are, not who you claim to be in comfortable moments. Any man can be patient when nothing is challenging him. Any man can be calm when no one is pushing back. But the moment someone attacks your work, dismisses your judgment, or works actively against you, that is when the real architecture of your character shows itself. Seneca wrote that adversity reveals character the way a storm tests a ship. Your enemies are the storm. If you react with obsession, with the need to destroy them at any cost, with months of replaying the conflict in your head, you have just learned something about yourself that your friends never managed to trigger. Do not waste that information. The man with no enemies has either never stood for anything, or has made himself so agreeable he has become irrelevant. Nietzsche wrote that the secret to harvesting the greatest fruitfulness is to live dangerously, to build your cities on the slopes of Vesuvius. Men who play it safe, who smooth every edge and never hold a position that risks opposition, they accumulate no enemies. They also accumulate no impact. Lincoln had enemies. Churchill had enemies. Mandela spent 27 years imprisoned by his. You cannot be a force in the world and expect no resistance. Resistance is proportional to impact. The absence of enemies is not peace. It is the sound of a man who is not committed to anything worth opposing. When you find yourself with a genuine enemy, not a random hater, but someone with a sustained, specific objection to you, the first question is not how to neutralize them. The first question is, what did I do or become that created this opposition? Sometimes the answer is that you made a real mistake and someone was right to push back. That is valuable. Sometimes the answer is that you became a threat to something they valued, and they could not tolerate it. That is also valuable because it tells you exactly where your growth is registering. Both answers are intelligence. Most men never ask the question because asking it requires the kind of honesty that is genuinely uncomfortable. Here is what we covered today. First, your friends filter the truth because they care about you. Your enemies do not, which makes them involuntary truth-tellers. Learn to extract the signal from what they say instead of just defending against it. Second, enemies track your patterns with cold precision because they are looking for where you fail. When they consistently hit the same weakness, that weakness is real and it belongs to you. Fix it. Third, how you respond to opposition is the most honest character test you will ever face. The man who handles his enemies with discipline, who uses the friction as fuel rather than fuel for resentment, is the man who actually grows. The Stoics did not avoid adversity. They extracted the lesson from it and moved forward. You can do the same. Your enemies are not just obstacles. They are, if you are paying attention, one of the most honest mirrors you will ever have access to. If this resonated, subscribe. We drop one video every Tuesday and Friday, no filler, no empty motivation, just ideas that actually change how you think and who you are under pressure. Hit the bell so you do not miss the next one. And if you know a man who needs to hear this, someone who is carrying a conflict right now and does not know what to do with it, send this video to him. That is it. See you Tuesday.